And now let's talk about the global politics with Yuriy Fizer, our global news editor. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Volodymyr.
So, what should we start with this week?
Unfortunately with Kremlin, unfortunately with Putin. By the way, Putin, Kremlin dictator, admitted this week, at the beginning of this week, that the war he started on February 24 may last a little bit longer than he anticipated. For this, he needs more resources, both human and technical. Then Kremlin's old man is therefore preparing its citizens for a possible way of new wave of mobilization. Will there be one? I don't know, and frankly speaking, I don't care. But we have to be ready for this, and our army has to be ready, and it is ready. So today we'll talk about this. And Russia will lose money, a lot of money, Volodymyr.
That's good news.
Yep, the Kremlin will not be able to use money to finance its aggressive and unprovoked war in Ukraine. I mean oil money. The United States of America are the members of the group of 7 leading economies. The European Union and Australia are imposing $60 price cap on the oil Russia continues to sell to other parts of the world. The price cap on Russian oil will drastically reduce the revenues Russia has earned from oil after it unleashed its illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. It will also serve to stabilize global energy prices while mitigating adverse consequences on energy supplies to third countries. Besides, the European Union is banning all seaborne imports of Russian oil, a move that takes effect on Monday. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has long warned that Russia will not sell oil to any country taking part in the price cap. Well, we'll see whether they will not sell its oil to other countries. We'll see. And so, following the European Council meeting on October 20 and 21st, the European Commission has proposed the unprecedented support package for Ukraine to up to 18 billion euros, and it had to be adopted by the EU finance ministers this week on Tuesday, but Hungary vetoed an 18 billion euro financial aid package from the European Union for Ukraine. Unfortunately, it was not a surprise for anyone. Long before the decision was made, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, and the Foreign Minister of this country openly spoke about it. But a week ago, Mr. Prime Minister Orban said that he will continue to oppose the European Union's plan to provide Ukraine with 18 billion euro next year. He opposes a common aid package and wants each EU country to help Ukraine separately from their own budgets. He does not agree with the fact that Ukraine is given funds not only for military needs, but also for the functioning of the state. So that's it, Volodymyr. And now we'll talk more about this with our guest. It's Jānis Bordans, Justice Minister of the Republic of Latvia. Labdien, Minister.
Labdien. Вечер добрый. Good evening. Hello, Ukraine.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
If you don't mind, we'll first listen to what Minister of Finance of Czech Republic, Mr. Zbyněk Stanjura, said after a meeting of finance ministers, and then I will ask you a question.
I would like to stress that the Czech presidency is fully committed to finding a compromise, and I am confident we will reach one in a few days. After that, it is only a technical matter of agreeing on the whole package. This can be done through a video conference meeting of the ECOFIN Council at the end of this year.
Mr. Bordans, you, as one of the ministers of a member state of the European Union, should know the answer to this question. Is it really possible to find a legal way out of this situation?
First of all, I need to admit that this is really shocking and sad story about the position of Hungary. Hungary in 1956 was really brave nation, and they was one of the leading nations in fighting against occupation, against Russian occupation. And now, after more than 50 years, they're supporting Kremlin. They're supporting Kremlin in such a crucial moment when all Europe and all the world are staying and supporting Ukraine, and when Ukrainians are dying on front, and Ukrainian civilians and people, the citizens, the children, elderly people are dying in their apartments, on the streets of their cities, of their villages, then such a one nation, and or I can say politicians, I cannot say about all Hungarians, and some politicians are playing games with supporting Kremlin. This is shocking for all Europeans. And also, I have to say that, as you see, all other nations of the European Union supporting Ukraine and ready to support with all those more than 80 millions, and I think even much more. Unfortunately, this is we need to find out legal solutions. This is diplomatic way, also this is legal way, and we can find out the solutions. We will find, but the issue, of course, I have to admit that this is matter of time, and we're losing time for that. But no doubt that we will finance. Nevertheless, if Hungarians will do it or not, will made obstacles for us or not.
Yeah, and by the way, talking about the possible way out, it's often said that in the EU, the changes in the voting procedures are desperately needed. So that important decision, such as this one, should be made not unanimously, but by a majority vote. Are they working on such changes in Brussels?
Yeah. Firstly, of course, this question should be addressed to ministers of foreign affairs. More than Minister of Justice, but talking about my colleagues, as I know, yes, they are working, but rather my position is would be option that faster options to decide on other ways rather than change voting procedure in European Union, because again there will be necessary anonymously voting. Discussions and so on. I know this is annoying to hear for Ukrainians, how long time we can just discuss, but yes, this is because of our procedures, where we are very careful about procedures in European Union. We are trying to be very democratic, and it's not always working during the war situation. But I am absolutely sure that as soon as possible it will be possible. So we will solve it.
Aren't you too careful about the procedures?
Yeah, that's the issue that can be different way. Indeed, nobody thought that this war is possible in territory of Europe. And we have to admit that we are not prepared, not been prepared for that situation. And also we will not be prepared that the one nation which will make those obstacles will be a nation which was formerly, in fact, occupied by Russians. We can see that this influence of Kremlin, of KGB and other organizations are especially strong in countries that was so-called former communist bloc. In fact, it was occupied bloc, and also in Germany. But even Germany now have changed this position 180 degrees since the very beginning of the war. So it's of course tough question whether we are too demanding on procedures or not. But this is the best way how we can work in democracy. to make decisions, decisions on legal ground.
Thank you. Yeah, but thank you for your support anyway and for the help of the whole Europe. But now let's talk a bit about the International Tribunal to investigate the Russian crimes. Russia said that even if it's created, Moscow will not listen to it. What then is this tribunal so important for us?
So tribunal, I would say it's important, first of all, it's important for justice. And justice must be realized. Justice must be in due proper way fixed and found, and then we can decide of the ways how we can execute these sentences. This, by the way, was one of our discussion topics with Mr. Denis Malyuska, your Minister of Justice, is in Riga during Riga's Justice Leader Forum in July, and also we discussed with Mr. Malyuska in Hague and in Prague during the presidency meetings. And I would like to say also hello to my counterpart and I would say good colleague, Mr. Malyuska. You have very good Minister of Justice who have invented him and gave this his energy and knowledge to this process. And but to answer directly to your questions, I could once more repeat, there is before we can execute, before we can sentence somebody in prison or in some other way to punish, we have to have judgment on our table. We have to, in proper procedure, we have to admit what is the crimes. We have to find the right judgment, and then we can decide how we can execute it. And I believe that this will one day we will find out this possibility. Of course, also it will mostly will rely on the shoulders of Ukrainian army.
Yeah, and Ukrainian army brings the justice to the world. That's right.
For this possibility.
So this was Jānis Bordans, Minister of Justice of the Republic of Latvia.
And now let's talk a bit about our defense capabilities.
Okay, let's talk. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the war in Ukraine should end through diplomacy and negotiations. A just and lasting peace is needed. He said this in an interview with the Wall Street Journal on Monday. According to Mr. Blinken, until Russia demonstrates that it is interested in serious diplomacy, the process will not move anywhere. In particular, he said, there is always a way out, and it is very simple. President Putin started this war, and he can end it tomorrow. Mr. Blinken reiterated that the U.S. will help Ukraine as long as it needed. He added that the United States will not make any decisions concerning Ukraine without the participation of Ukraine. And now let's hear about what he said also.
Strike upon strike, coming from Russia, and now trying to take out the civilian infrastructure that is allowing people to have heat, to have water, to have electricity, what we've called weaponizing winter. That is the daily and nightly reality in Ukraine. We have neither encouraged nor enabled the Ukrainians to strike inside of Russia, but the important thing is to understand what Ukrainians are living through every day with the ongoing Russian aggression against their country, and our determination to make sure that they have in their hands, along with many other partners around the world, the equipment that they need to defend themselves, to defend their territory, to defend their freedom.
And now we are joined by Hanna Shelest, Security Studies Program Director in the Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism. Mrs. Shelest, greetings and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Mrs. Shelest, so my first question to you will be as follows. Can we say that the United States of America gave us a go-ahead to hit hostile targets in the territory of Russia right now?
Let's say Ukraine doesn't need a permission for this because we are acting according to the international law, and sometimes the preemptive attack against the military objects at the territory of the enemy, or in our case at the territory of aggression, are considered as the legitimate target, the legitimate aims. However, we understand that definitely as far as we are using the US equipment and US ammunition, it's always this question of restriction. And we remember the conversation that we had in Washington before we received HIMARS, that they would not like to see any type of escalation. However, now what we received is the green light. It is the statement that, or better say, confirmation that Ukraine has a right, Ukraine can do it, and the United States will not say anything against it.
And at least we got a capability to do that.
Definitely, but let's be honest, we had this capability from the day one, considering that we are bordering countries. As soon as you're standing just at the border, you can just throw the grenade and you're already targeting the territory of the Russian Federation. For this, you didn't need the HIMARS or the long-range missiles. Another question is that definitely in Ukrainian interest to reach the certain aerodromes from where the jets start against Ukraine, or the certain ammunition depot at the territories that are not just at the border in Belgorod region or in Crimea, but somewhere further. And in this case, yes, Ukraine need a proper ammunition, the long-range ammunition, so to be safe for our armed forces, but to target as far as necessary.
Mrs. Shelest, you recently wrote a big article about NATO. One of the issues you touched upon was the following: Ukraine, enhanced opportunity partner or aspirant. So what is Ukraine right now? And how close, or maybe how far, are we from the membership in NATO?
You know, legally we are both, because both is not the formal status. And definitely in 2019, Ukraine received this confirmation of being the aspirant. Aspirant is the country that clearly confirmed that it would like to be a member. And after we changed the constitution of Ukraine, stating that membership in NATO is in our national interest, we were confirmed to be the aspirant. Enhanced Opportunity Partnership, it is the special program created, or special status created by NATO in 2014, where only 6 countries, as for now, Australia, Jordan, Georgia, Ukraine, Finland, and Sweden, those countries who had the highest level of cooperation and highest level of trust, plus included the access to the intelligence and to the inner circle in NATO. The problem is that this program never been operational. It is not a program as the Partnership for Peace. It's more of political status to uprise, if we can say like this, among the other 40 partners of NATO, rather than the really framework for cooperation. And Ukraine, together with Georgia, for many years tried to fill it with some substance. De facto, we received certain benefits, like, for example, more Ukrainian officers started to be in the NATO headquarters, or we received access to the intelligence information in real time. Or we started to be present in the exercises that previously been open only for the NATO member states. And that allowed us during the war to receive certain information or certain ammunition that previously would be much more difficult to have. But otherwise, I mean, legally, it's not changing anything. How closer we are to the membership, it seems to me that the war brought us much closer, because Ukraine really demonstrated capabilities of our armed forces, the interoperability with our NATO partners and allies, our willingness to fight for our choice. And as for now, the question is more political, in addition to some requirements that definitely are set. But this closer or further is still, unfortunately, more in the political cabinets rather than at the military battlefield.
One more question for you. Why do we hear more and more from different parts of the world that the Russian war should end at the negotiating table? We are not told directly that we must sit down at this table. Different politicians say that Ukraine should decide when and how to do that, but they say it often. Are they maybe trying to gently lead us to this decision?
Some of them, yes, and let's be honest, they've been trying to do it since the day one of this aggression, or if not to say since the day one of 2014. But my response usually is that negotiations is not the ultimate goal. The negotiations is just the instrument or the tool. And what is our ultimate goal is up to Ukraine to decide. The question is that negotiations, like, honestly, each conflict is finishing with a certain type of the negotiations or, I don't know, some treaty or agreement because you need to sign some documents. Yep, anyway, you will see. But the question is what you discuss there. If we are discussing Ukrainian future, that's not the negotiations. That is more of surrendering or ultimatum of the Russian Federation. If we are discussing the Russian reparation, how they are going to pay money for the restoration of Ukraine, that's also negotiations.
Yep.
So that's why negotiations should not be some kind of mantra that some European politicians are trying to impose. And we need to explain it, that Ukraine is not against negotiations. We were at them in Belarus. We were on them in Istanbul, if you remember, March. We were sitting and negotiating grain deal. So Ukraine is not against the negotiations. The question is what to negotiate.
Yes, that's the question. Thank you, Mrs. Shellis. Thank you for taking part in Spotlight Ukraine. This was Hanna Shellis, Security Studies Program Director in the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism. And at the end, Volodymyr...
Let me just guess. Is it gonna be Iran?
Yes. You knew it. In particular, will the Islamic Republic give the missiles to Russia, that then Russia can use these missiles in its war in Ukraine?
Against Ukraine, yeah.
Iran has so far not delivered ballistic missiles to Russia and may not do so. This is what a senior Ukrainian presidential advisor, Mikhailo Podolyak, has said. Iran has come under huge diplomatic pressure, and protests have also raised pressure on the government. So Iranian leaders are hesitating to give Russia its ballistic missiles. The United States has not seen evidence that Iran has transferred ballistic missiles to Russia for use against Ukraine. This is what White House National Security Council Strategic Communication Coordinator John Kirby said on Wednesday. Unfortunately, he added that Iran continues to sell Russia its drones. So it doesn't matter, Volodymyr, what Iran is going to do, whether it is going to sell its drone to Russia or no. We know what we have to do, and this is to fight back Russian aggression, and we do it.
Yeah, and closer to the victory. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you in the studio. Yuriy Fizer, our global news editor, and we were discussing the global news spotlighting Ukraine. And we continue. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Latest news, trends, and analytics on all about Ukraine. Like, share, and subscribe. Any questions, proposals, and comments, contact us via email.